Okay, so I know we have some people still trickling in. I think one of our breakout sessions ran just a little bit long. So we apologize as folks are still coming in and taking their seats. But we want to make sure that we get started to give this panel the maximum amount of time that we can. So we really appreciate everyone's flexibility. And at this time, I would like to introduce our next session, which is, give me a moment. So want to welcome Kanwaljit Singh up as our moderator, and we'll be talking about the missing voices in neonatal drug development, harnessing patient advocacy for impact. So give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon. I have, let me just see. So I'm without any further ado, I'm actually going to welcome the opening speaker of our discussion, Discenza, who has been a very long-term partner of everything that we do at International Neonatal Consortium. She, has been a steadfast patient advocate, talking to people about the importance of neonatal drug development and bringing her own personal reflections into why what we do at INC matters. So Deb, do you want to come in and talk about it? Then we will get started with the panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. Before I start, I want to let you know that we have a panelist up here, Christina, wave to the crowd. She's a former micro-preemie, and she's nervous. So I would like you all to help me and give her a warm welcome. See, they don't bite, but I bite hard. Here we go. Okay, so it was 2003. I'm going to tell you a little story. Some of you may have heard this before. Bear with me. It gets better. I was at the OB's office and I said, I was born a little early myself. I think this baby's coming early. Oh, no, no, no. It's your first baby. You'll be late. No, I think this baby's coming early. No, 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 you'll be late. Okay, I'm trusting you. I've given you the information you need. Well, a month later, I'm staring at Beck in the NICU in an incubator going, what just happened? It was terrifying. I was powerless as a parent. There was no patient education. I barely had a nurse tell me to take Beck's temperature and to squeeze her in the womb hold. That was it. That was my motherly moment for the day. And I was lucky to touch her. Not every parent gets to do that. Beck was 30 weeks. She was 2 pounds, 15 and a half ounces at birth, and she started out strong. She had a 38-day stay in the NICU. She came home on medical equipment, a whole team of specialists. We almost lost her several times in the NICU, but they kept saying she's doing great, which means she lived. Okay, what are we doing at home? What can we do for her? How can we help her with development? She didn't qualify for this thing called early intervention therapies, a state program. What is that? Do we need to be in that? No, it was the NICU follow-up clinic that it was an option on the paperwork. So was the health department's infant monitoring program. I signed up for everything. We need help. I'm worried about this baby. And apparently I was the only one thinking about this. Beck did not qualify for early intervention until about 18 months when the health department folks said, you should get her evaluated. She probably won't qualify, which means the budgets are cut and you're probably not going to qualify for it, even though your child needs help. They didn't say that, but that's what I know now. Beck went on to have a global developmental delay and had 3 different special therapists. And we were off and running. The same day Beck qualified for that, the pediatrician finally diagnosed her with asthma or reactive airway disease. I spent the next month numb. We haven't left the NICU. It feels like even 22 years later that we haven't left the NICU. We worked through all the specialists. We did all the things. Yeah. Kindergarten, the team around the table, the 10 people, it was like being with the 10 people in the delivery room. There's a lot of 10s in this speech, by the way, a lot of groups of 10. And yeah, what do you think? How do you think she's doing? Well, I would say that she's doing well. By the way, you get to see cute pictures. Some are cute, some are more sad. Doing great, but she's picky eater and blah, 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 blah. She was born prematurely, etc. Does she look you in the eye? No one told us that this was a thing. And by the way, yeah, she looks us in the eye. She did. Beck got diagnosed with autism in kindergarten. Second grade, I was tired of it. Went to the pediatrician, and I said, no offense to pediatricians in here, I'm sorry, but the reality is they are generalists unless they have a specialty in this field. I said, ADHD, I want to talk about it. And he's like, and I'm like, no, we are talking about ADHD. And he said, okay, we will. It's 2 different appointments. I came armed to the first one with letters from the teachers, everything, and we were off and running. We got medication on the first appointment. And throughout this, I kept watching Beck's walking gait. And you'll see a couple of pictures in there. In the second row, toward the second from the left, is Beck on a elliptical. We had her working with a personal trainer. She was gaining a lot of weight and just really struggling to move. We were trying to figure out how to help her. That was the elliptical where I was sitting behind her, and I found out that her ankles were squishy. They were rolling. Because I was sitting right behind that elliptical in that black chair. I think you can see it. And I'm like, that's not normal. What is that? And the trainer that you see there, she's like, oh, she might need orthotics. Well, fast forward, we ended up in an orthopedic surgeon's office. Beck's 11 years old. And I said, is it possible, very quietly, is it possible this is CP? And she said, well, if it is, it's really, really mild. Try the orthotics and see what happens. 13 and a half years old, go back, thought we weren't getting a diagnosis. We just need a rescript. Walk up and down the hallway, run, and it's a different doctor in the group. As Beck's doing that, I can see the difference. I can see things have gotten worse. And I said, wait, what? And the doctor's next to me and said, how early was she? And I'm like, oh, no, not today. No. Sure enough, she did. She showed me how Beck had spasticity. Okay, so I need to end this very quickly by being very pointed about this. Our family does not go through this so that we can have another family go through this in the same way, because it happens all the time, okay? We need to do better by these families. And next week, Kanwaljit, Betsy, and I and another gentleman from NICHD, we're all talking before the FDA. Thank you, FDA, if you're here. We are talking about neonatal and pediatric drug development. And I'm going to be super clear right now, as a patient advocate and one that works in this area, we have to get back to business with neonatal drug development. When I heard that we had industry members moving away from sponsoring the International Neonatal Consortium that's part of CPATH, I was very upset. We cannot go backwards. We have to go forwards. We are saving babies earlier and earlier with the same drugs that are not meant for these babies. They're adult drugs sized down to infants. It's abominable. I'm just speechless at times when I think about that. I never want another family to go through what we did. Let's do better. Let's work together. Work with the patient advocates. We can help you with clinical trial recruitment. We can help you if you're needing an investor pitch deck for your small pharmaceutical. We can do that, but you got to ask. That's why we're here. We all work together. We all work together. Let's do this. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Deb. Good afternoon. I'm Kanwaljit Singh. I'm the Executive Director of International Neonatal Consortium. The theme of this session today is basically that neonates are therapeutic orphans. That's what the scientific term being used to describe premature babies. And the reason behind that is simply because there are, for the past 35 years, there hasn't been any new treatment that has been approved specifically for diseases of prematurity. It's a big problem. What ends up happening is most drugs in NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, are basically being used off-label. But that what I mean is adult drugs or older children medications are basically just being scaled down to be treated for the conditions of prematurity, which is a big problem. And it kind of sets up as a off kind of a vicious cycle. You use off-label drugs, they're often being used pretty often, all the time, up to 90% of the time. That reduces incentives to do actual clinical trials to treat those diseases. That leads to more off-label usage. It's basically a cycle that keeps on going on and on and on, and has been going on for the past 30, 40, 45 years. And to talk about the reasons why this is happening, I have this very distinguished group of panelists on the call on this session today. It's a mixture of patients, their parents, and one of our very close collaborators from FDA, Dr. Lynne Yao. So I'm just going to be talking to them about their experiences, to the patients, to their parents, their experiences, lived experiences when they were born prematurely, what happened, the fact that there were no drugs available then and there are no drugs available now. So I'm just going to jump right down into the discussion. The next up on this discussion, you already heard Deb Discenza talk about her experiences. We have another one of our patient members, Betsy Pilon, who is from Hope for HIE, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. She has been working with INC for a very long period of time. And I just wanted to give the floor to her to talk about her experiences being a parent of a baby who was born with HIE, how her experiences have been, how her advocacy has actually really moved the needle to a large extent in HIE drug development. So Betsy, do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Would you like me to speak from here? Great. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here and share more about our journey in advocacy, both personally and then making this grow as we grow Hope for HIE. So my son Max was born 13 and a half years ago. Max stopped moving when I was 37 weeks pregnant, so had excellent prenatal care. Definitely didn't expect anything to go wrong. The pervasive messaging out about NICU is that it's for premature babies. And so we thought, my husband and I, would be those parents that go to get checked out at labor and delivery and get sent home. Silly us. That was not our trajectory. So when we went to the hospital, we got checked and Max was in severe distress. So they let me know that they were going to need to perform an emergency C-section and that he would be coming very rapidly and I may need to be knocked out and all the things. Luckily, I did not need to be. I could actually be awake for his birth. And they intubated him very quickly right away. He let out a little cry prior. And the neonatology team in the community hospital was on it. We delivered into the Henry Ford Health System in the Detroit area where I'm based. I had worked for the health system in marketing and communications. I had actually worked with the neonatal transport team to do some community outreach about their services to the level 3 NICU. I had never heard of HIE, and we quickly got transferred downtown after the neonatologist said that Max qualified for the one approved therapeutic intervention, non-pharmacological intervention, which is therapeutic hypothermia, which has significantly changed the trajectory for HIE over the past 10 to 15 years in particular, as we see a wide range of impact, but it is resource dependent and there are significant limitations for therapeutic hypothermia. So HIE happens to be globally a huge problem, the second leading cause of infant mortality worldwide and significant cause of disability. Max received excellent clinical care in the NICU, but it was a very daunting experience for us as families. He was the biggest baby in the most critical pod. He was almost lost within the first 24 hours, in particular, trying to get him down into cooling. And then he started to stabilize, thankfully, because it was a successful intervention for him. Dosed with phenobarbital to prevent neonatal seizures. And really, the picture where I'm holding him is the first time I held him, and that was 2 hours after we were told that Max's MRI looked catastrophic. And they didn't know where things were going to go. It was one of the most difficult days of my husband and I's life as brand new parents to a new baby, very excited to be parents. As you might see, the nurses thought we were crazy and to be so excited and hopeful. But when I switch to my story about Hope for HIE, you'll see why that is the embodiment of hope for our organization. So Max's brain injury was a moderate to severe injury, an unknown prognostication. They hoped for the best. He was at risk for cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities and all sorts of things. He's now 13 years old. He's in 8th grade. He plays the trombone. He loves playing the bass guitar and playing basketball. He has all sorts of impacts, but he lives his best life every day, which is what I like to say about him. When I joined Hope for HIE, at the time it was a support group based on Facebook. There were about 300 families from all around the world, and everyone had a similar story of feeling very isolated. There was no education about HIE. There was very little on outcomes, very little data on outcomes. And really the need was there to develop a strong advocacy organization because there was no patient advocacy for HIE, unlike many other disease states. And HIE is a catalyst diagnosis. It can lead to epilepsy and cerebral palsy and a lot of the rare epilepsies, in fact. And so in 2019, Hope for HIE was experiencing a surge of growth. I was serving as the president of the board, and we attended the American Epilepsy Society conference. And the epilepsy advocacy groups are plentiful, especially in rare. And we find ourselves in the between neonatology, neurology, and rare, depending on who you ask. And the epilepsy advocacy groups, I remember sitting in the AES meeting and had Tracy Dixon Salazar of the LGS Foundation say, "We've been waiting for you to exist for 30 years. And that was one of the most pivotal moments thinking about how much we needed this advocacy. So we started getting connections with some interested research groups, both on the academic and industry side, and really started thinking about how can we build to be the best partner we can be to move this forward quickly and what is needed to happen, because babies can't wait, as you heard from Deb and from everyone else. There's gonna be thousands of babies born today, tomorrow, and the next day. And so what can we do together I've heard so many people in the therapeutic development space and talk about the unmet needs and the barriers on their ends, and how can we be the conduit between the family's unmet needs and the therapeutic unmet needs so we can do this faster, better, more agile, and look at things like NAMs and look at things that can really accelerate this. And so really, it's a difficult, a difficult problem, but there's wonderful people working on it. And we started the Neonatal Brain Injury Collaborative within INC recently because there is so much interest and people are linking arms to move this forward.
Thank you, Betsy. So, I had a couple of questions, follow-up questions to what you just talked about, your story with your baby born with HIE, your journey with Hope for HIE, and to where we are now, starting an initiative focused on HIE with a lot of industry members and, a huge amount of academia and regulators being engaged with the sole purpose of creating those quantitative tools that we talk about on a daily basis. What I wanted to really understand was, HIE is kind of a neonatal adjacent type of a condition. Maybe it's not exactly a disease of prematurity, but similar type of age groups. But the trajectory insofar as the drug development efforts that are happening in HIE versus core prematurity are vastly different. On the one hand, but as Deb said, 30 years, 40 years, absolutely nothing has changed. Versus, we already see some of the momentum that is happening in HIE. What is different? What changed? And how can we basically do more of the same within our neonatal communities also, so that those babies who deserve treatments developed for them, they do not basically linger and suffer?
Yeah, I think we have a significant investment on the academic and industry side in neonatal neurology. It's now a specialty field. And so you have really wonderful people that are committed to tackling some of these problems. And like I said, the overlap and the barriers that have existed and the gaps between the two specialties. So I think coming together in a multidisciplinary way certainly is helping. And then I think when we look at what we're trying to do moving forward is trying to see where we can work together. I mentioned earlier, the epilepsy organizations are so active. In neonatology, we really don't have that. We don't have people that are as much focused on therapeutic development. We have a ton of NICU support organizations, which is amazing. Families need support. There needs to be a focus on learning the side of therapeutic development and what is important to bridge that and be that conduit. So I really encourage, our NICU advocates to dig in, to look at what these specific areas are, BPD and all these other focus areas that are within INC, and that, are moving things forward, and how, I had to dig in. I had no idea about therapeutic development. So, we can learn, we're lifelong learners, and I think, bringing and being that bridge and learning how to be a bridge for that voice in that multi-stakeholder environment is the way forward.
So just another follow-up being that, being out there in front of everybody, talking about your problems as a HIE, parent, all of the issues that you face, how has that, directly impacted more and more, I guess, stakeholder engagement, industry engagement to get involved in HIE drug development?
Yeah, I think it's about storytelling and making sure that people are seen, heard, and validated, right? And when we talk about, the many ways that a disease state or diagnosis may impact a community, it's through storytelling that you really elevate those unmet needs and find people that want to tackle that with you, and trying to find those excellent partners to do so.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I always say is that, outside of the NICU, nobody really sees those premature babies. And once they're out, it kind of ceases to be an acute issue. So, it basically kind of a cycle that perpetuates itself. I just wanted to move to Lynne. Dr. Yao, you have seen, you've heard, you've worked with us for so long with our I guess, all of the various efforts that focus on BPD and other prematurity related disease areas versus some of the progress that we're seeing with HIE. How do you understand this sort of a contrast from your FDA's perspective? What is it that stands out to you most in that sort of a different trajectory of drug development efforts?
Yeah, thanks, Kanwaljit. First, thanks to the whole panel. I feel like I shouldn't be saying anything because I think the stories are here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go off script a little bit. I will answer your question, I promise.
Yeah.
But one of the things that it's taken me a while to learn, I'm not always a fast learner, but one of the things I have learned over time is the value, and I mean value throughout the life cycle development of our strongest partners, the people who are going to end up, living with the diseases and the treatments, are the patients and their caregivers. And it's taken me a while because I thought, when I first arrived, regulator, I'm going to be the one in charge. But you lose so much when you don't take the time to hear and we've heard all day today, I think that's a theme, what matters most to patients. One of the things that I would encourage everybody in the room to think of wherever you are in this drug development space, and I learned this in the last few years, is that engaging patients and caregivers early in the process, you can reap so many benefits during your drug development program. Let me just give you a couple of examples. The first is, you've heard the obvious, like finding endpoints that are clinically relevant, understanding how to measure these things, what's important. But more importantly, what I've learned is that when patients are involved early in the process, when you get to the point at which you are going to enroll in clinical trials, there's a whole group of people out there saying, I know about this trial. They actually helped me to design it. You ought to enroll in this trial. Much more powerful than a practitioner who says, I guess you should enroll in the trial. right? Or certainly a drug company who comes out and says it, or maybe FDA who says it, right? There is this already built-in trust from that community of, we know what's going on in this trial, and we think it's important for you to enroll, and you're gonna see, I think, we've seen actually increases in enrollment because of that, because patients were involved at the beginning. The other part is at the other side. So you go all the work to get that trial done, to get that trial completed, to get that treatment approved. And then you have people, and I've heard it, spoken in different ways. You have people who are very mistrustful of the healthcare system, very mistrustful of treatments that you think are, that they are new, or, how do we know this is really safe for my child or my, son or my mother? When patients have been enrolled in those clinical trials, they go back to their communities and they say, I was in that trial. I know that they did a really good job with that trial, and they even followed up and gave me results. I would trust using this treatment. So that kind of relationship is not built at the very end. It's built from the beginning. So I had to say this, Kanwaljit. So my point is that it's invaluable to have the patients involved from the very beginning, not just for that, pot of gold that everybody thinks about, which is, we get a clinically meaningful endpoint. It's throughout the life of that drug and really the success of that drug.
Absolutely, agreed.
Now, getting back to your question, the difference between HIE and BPD is really not that great.
Yeah.
But I will say that, we have a great representative from the HIE community up on the stage. And, I don't know that I've actually met someone from the BPD community up on the stage or, in our previous work. That is not to say that they're not out there, but you can already see that, and with all of you out there who are coming to represent your patient communities, this is why there's even the light of day being shed, is that you've done the hard work to be a champion for your family member or your loved one. So I would say that one of the biggest differences is, the efforts that the champions make, both outside and inside industry, to make these things happen.
Right. I'm actually going to go back to both Deb and Betsy asking, I'm also going a little bit off script here because of the things that, Lynn just said. What can be done to change? I'm just going to use BPD as an example here because, we all talk about BPD day in and day out, and it's such a big, huge concern. How can we make patient advocacy better in BPD space as compared to, the current reality?
Well, I think that we might agree, Betsy, that it's, again, what Lynn said is engage early and often, and make sure that the patient advocate is along the way, because they are going to magnify everything to the community of what's happening. And they will help you take that drug endpoint and all the other pieces and parts that goes into the approval and in scaling and getting it out there to a healthcare community, a community of patients that might not trust. But yes, there is a trust point. Any parent that has been in the NICU, whether prematurity or HIE or other rare conditions, there's an automatic trust. And there's honestly a lingo we all understand. Our address books change when we go through this experience. We lose family members and friends because they just don't get it. They don't understand this is lifelong, or they just don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
And we connect together. That's why the NICU Parent Network exists, because we are groups that all understand this experience. But yes, I think it's really important to include them early on as things are starting, because we're invaluable to you. We need you, you need us.
Yeah. It's really bidirectional, right?
Yeah.
So Betsy, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I think what I wanted to bring to this part of the conversation is that, with HIE, the original cooling trials, for those of you that may not know, babies have to be, cooling has to be initiated within 6 hours of birth. So you are the consent, all of that had to take place. And cooling sounds crazy. It sounds like science fiction to a parent who has been through something unexpected turbulent, maybe mom's in a different NICU because baby has to be transferred. I mean, the stakes are really high and complex, and yet those trials persisted, and yet they were successful. And so these families have that experience to share, and it's not just HIE, it's across the different perspectives, but also to say that these are different experiences. So HIE is going to be a different experience, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of prematurity, right? It's going to be different. It's going to be a little bit different than BPD because they're different populations with different outcomes in different people. So I think it's really important too that we talk about tokenization a little bit. We talk about making sure that we're actually centering that lived experience in that lived community for that indication that you may be exploring and moving forward.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Betsy. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So quickly moving on to Ashley. Ashley, do you want to talk about your story with your child Colin, born prematurely and having had seizures ever since he was born?
Yes, just seeing those pictures kind of brought some tears to my eyes. So my son Colin was born at 25 weeks gestation via emergency C-section at a small community hospital where they didn't have the resources to properly intubate him. They were unsuccessful after three tries, so they gave him manual ventilation for an hour until the flight team from Georgetown came. And I just remember the NICU team like wheeling him into my room in this little small portable incubator. And my first thought was, my baby's going to die. And 3 years prior, I had my first son at 21 weeks gestation. He died shortly after birth. So in that realm of possibility, death was possible, right? And so whenever you get into the NICU, everyone always describes it as a roller coaster. They're going to be up and down. But I had 6 months of free falling. Your son has brain bleeds. At first they said like 1 in 3, and you're like, okay, that's fine. And then it's 2 and 4, and then it's 3 and 4, and then you add in 2 cystic PBLs, hydrocephalus, that then he's going to need to be shunted. And then they tell you all of the scary things, right? So your kid is most likely going to be X, Y, and Z, blind, unable to ambulate, like just require total care. And like Deb said before, you never leave the NICU. And so my son is 6 years old now, and we still have complications. He had 1 seizure in the NICU, and then was seizure free for a while. And then all of a sudden you're having seizures every 3 months, and then it's weekly. So then you're trying to adjust medications on that end. And then he has BVP2, and now we finally got the diagnosis of asthma. Like, there was 1 year we pretty much moved into the PICU. Like, every time we show up, they're like, oh, there goes Colin and Mom. My kid definitely has like healthcare related PTSD. He can smell a doctor or nurse a mile away. He looks at you, he's like, bye. But on the other end, he's 6 now, and he's a joy, and he's learned to thrive in his own way. So kind of like what you said about your son, Max, our life doesn't look like what we anticipated, but there's still been beauty in the journey. And I've definitely been able to rely on like my other NICU friends and families. Yeah. I don't think I answered your question.
Yeah, I think it definitely did. It definitely did. I really wanted to just understand your story, honestly. One follow-up question that I had for you was, neonatal seizures is also not an exception to how things are in general in neonatal drug development, which I'm pretty sure you already know there, except for like phenobarbital, there isn't anything at all that's been developed or approved for neonatal seizures. How has that lack of treatments impacted you then and continue to impact you now? Or Colin?
So when Colin was in the NICU, he had 1 seizure, and they hooked him up to the EEG, and they was like, well, it looks like he has a bunch of irregular electrical activity, but not enough to necessarily classify as a seizure. And so we get sent home a couple of months after I think we went home on like Keppra. He was immediately, that was discontinued, and then we were fine. And then right after he turned 1, I'm at work, and my husband sends me a video of my kid actively having a seizure. He's like, what is this? I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. And I don't feel like I was adequately prepared for that. Like when I was in the NICU, like when we came home, I'm thinking, okay, I have to immediately start intensive therapy, all of that type of stuff, get them moving. But I wasn't thinking about anywhere in the realm of like continuous like seizure activity. And then he went seizure-free for a couple more years. And then, like I said earlier, it was weekly, weekly, weekly. So it's impacted like our entire life. It's like we can't go on vacation without me searching for like the nearest hospital before I go. I can't, whenever I enter his room in the morning, I have to take a deep breath and pray that I'm not going to walk into my kid having a seizure, because I've done that plenty of times. Or, I can't even just run into the grocery store really quickly with just him and like a wallet, because I need to make sure I have my emergency seizure meds in our emergency bag, because you never know. And then I talked to like a lot of moms who are on this journey, and we compare like our kids and if they have seizures, and like their treatment plan is different than my treatment plan. And we're trying to figure out like where is like the middle ground. Like, why did your neurologist mention this and mine didn't?
Yeah.
Lack of peace of mind.
Yeah, no, I get it. I completely get it. Thank you so much, Ashley. I do greatly appreciate it. Moving on to talk with Joyce and Christina. If we go on to the next slide, yeah. So Joyce, as a mom of a baby who was born premature, that is Christina, do you want to talk a little bit about your story as well of Christina when she was a baby in NICU growing up, your experiences of lack of treatments for her condition then versus now? How do you perceive the situation to be?
It's fine. Yeah, I'll go right there.
Yeah.
So this is Christina right here. And she doesn't look it, but she's 38 years old. So I'm assuming things were going on 2 years before with other babies. And I'm going to say 40 years ago, we were told, among other things, that, we had to trust that what they were doing, even though it was experimental, and the reasons why, they were doing the best that they could. And they couldn't predict outcomes because there were no preemies that had survived 20 years yet. So there was no data. And we had to wait for data to collect. And I understood that. I'm very reasonable about those kinds of things, because I just feel like if you're with the doctor and you want to get well, you submit. So that's what we do. But when Christina was born, she was 25 weeks and 5/7, 25 and 5/7 weeks premature, and she was 694 grams. And so when I went in to see her for the first time, I was really not prepared, because I had never seen a preemie like this. My nephew was preemie, but he was like 3-4 weeks early, and he just a little ball of happy. But this little Christina, I went in to see her, and if you look at the third picture on the top, she was like a little potato, or the doctors used to say they kind of all look like E.T., and she did. And I wasn't ready for all of those tubes and bandages. And how could you touch your baby? There's no place to touch her. So I didn't, and not for a long time. But this is what she looked like, and this is one of the most jarring images for me still, to see her in that condition. The other thing is the top left, and I know you see my little friend here. This is Christina's big bird. And if you look, she's laying right next to that big bird and fits right in my hand. And that's what happened to my daughter. I never expected a baby this tiny could be resilient. Never, ever. And actually, I really was afraid to touch her, because I was afraid I was interfering in God's work. I wasn't sure it was a good idea for hands. I really didn't think so. I felt like she was still working on her things inside, and she needed to continue to be uninterrupted at what was going on with her. But I think the next picture on the last picture on the right there on the top, it says that she was, I think, maybe 7 days old, where I could finally hold her. And there's the nurse's hand with the little ambu going on. And she was wrapped in layers and layers of blankets and Mylar and all this stuff. And there was a lot to hold, but this baby, she was 7 days old from here. There really wasn't much of her. I was absolutely terrified to hold her. And things continued, BPD, NEC, PDA ligation, things with real names, and then the pressing ROP, RLF, and which, you know, we never heard of any of these things, and this was very overwhelming to us. We were still kids ourselves in our 20s, and it was miles high. But the doctor down there on the bottom right, that's Christina's neonatologist, Dr. Kathy Meyer. She is the most kind and compassionate person we have ever met. And the rest of the team at that hospital was very engaging and very educative to us about the things that were going on. I said to her, don't talk anymore about that stomach disease or that eye disease. Tell me the NEC, the ROP, RLF. I want to learn so I understand what's happening, what's going on, maybe what an outlook might be like. So I have a feeling for it all. I just need to know, because I have to take care of her if she comes home. And that is the word, the if, which is always hanging in the air, even after you go home. So we learned a lot, and I took notes, and I kept a spiral bound notebook of everything, which I still have. And I recorded every drop of saliva they ever collected on her and what it could mean, because it was really important to me to get the whole picture. I don't like when everybody says, they're fine, she's just fine, she's doing well. And the next thing that happens is that roller coaster drop, where all of her numbers go down and hit the floor. And the thing about Christina was, while she was in the isolette, she had arms and legs moving all the time. And the chief neonatologist said, I'm afraid if we open that isolette, she's going to run right out the door. And so she was a very active preemie, something they did not see much of. And then one day that all just stopped, and she was immobile. And it was terrifying to see, as what a prerequisite to fear. And this happened so many times. She's fine, and now she's plummeting all over. It was very upsetting. So one of the big things that's happened to Christina, apart from the routine things with all the letters, is she has IVC occlusion. And I know that's something you've all heard of, but probably with regard to pregnant mothers who lose the airspace or whatever to breathe and reoxygenate, but it doesn't happen with the children. And so she's got this IVC occlusion. We don't know why. Was she born without it? Did somebody intervene with it? Somehow, we don't know. We never knew. But she did have a central line that was installed at the top of her right thigh. And as you can see in these pictures, her thigh was, no bigger than my finger. And site was hard to find, and they wound up doing surgery to install it. Well, the very next day, that sore, which was about the size of a thumbprint on my finger, was explosively infected. And they tried Silvadine, they just tried a lot of things to try to get that to heal. But it took months. And the result of what happened in the healing was a large keloid that went across her leg. And as she got older, to about 4 or 5 years old, the keloid started to tear. And the doctors were afraid that this was going to really rupture and kill her. We got her into Shriners Hospital. They were as concerned as we were. They did surgery on her. And I was allowed to attend during the surgery. I talked to the surgeon and I said, can I watch? Because I really want to know what happens. Yes, you can come in, you stand over there, you say nothing, you don't move. You just look. And that is exactly what I did. But when he took this thing out that looked like a Hamburg patty cutter, I about fainted, because it went on her leg and it took a chunk out that was about 5/8 of an inch deep. And you removed all that tissue to get the keloid out. And so they placed something on the inside of it that looked like a handy wipe. And he said it would granulate and come back. Well, it came back looking like a chocolate chip cookie with all the spots where the blood was healing and so forth. And then it rose up and it was okay. It wasn't bad. But she has a great big scar on her right thigh. And it's very obtrusive when you see her. People think, was she in a fire? What happened?
Yeah.
But you have to educate them and you have to tell them, always on the side of education, what's going on. We would tell them and they would, poor baby and all that stuff. The kids in school would bully her and point and laugh. And, that was hard. She did get an elastic brace to put on and that did help a little bit for support. But it also happened that a clot formed on the end of the IV and traveled through her body and sat somewhere in her leg. So her calf is smaller on the left side than the right, and her ankle. And she lost all 5 toes on her left foot to gangrene. I got the call in the morning, and I was at the hospital every single day from 8 to 5:30. And then I was told to come in because this happened and no one knew why.
Yeah.
And they were allowed to fall off, not even surgically. I don't have a picture up there of her little foot. Her sister calls it her ballerina foot.
Oh,
Or her Cinderella foot.
you're amazing.
Yeah, this is,
She is amazing.
yeah, no,
Gotta
definitely.
stop because we got a minute left. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Thank you.
Yes. So we only have like half a minute left. I just wanted to see if anybody in the audience has any questions. Look, bottom line is there was no agenda to this discussion. I didn't want to come out of this with some lessons for you guys all. It was just a part of the whole thing to let these stories of these patients and parents come out so that you can understand the challenges that they have faced all through their lives when, because of the fact that they were born prematurely. Any last minute questions at all from the audience?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
For Christina,
Yes.
what would you like the researchers to know, knowing we only have a few seconds? What do you want them to know about your experience and what should they know as they're looking to do research in the neonatology and all that? Do you have any thoughts?
Yes.
Real quick.
Yes, I honestly, everyone, I feel like with the drug development that it needs to be changed after 40 years, almost 40 years, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that it's still from adult changing, going into a preemie. I find that to be very disturbing and that I think it needs to be changed. I'm sorry, I have a communications disability from my prematurity.
Okay.
I think it needs to be made from a, thank you.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I think it needs to be age appropriate for a preemie.
Yes.
But then also, there are bodies that are sensitive to medication, like me. So the response might be not right for a preemie. So there could be trial runs as well. But I think after 40 years, I think something, almost 40 years, that I think something needs to be done with this. I think that that needs to be changed very soon. So
Excellent.
that's what I
You
think.
got your marching orders.
Yeah.